so much to everyone who has tuned in to this channel. I truly appreciate you. And if you're new here and you enjoy Whispered True Crime, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Now let's get right to the case. Tonight we are traveling to Pennsylvania. Shout out to all my friends in Pennsylvania. So this is the case that I think everyone out there is somewhat familiar with, and that is the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, which occurred very recently in July of 2024. So, we are going to start with some background information on the shooter, whose name was Thomas Matthew Crooks. He was born on September 20th, 2003. He was 20 at the date of the crime. He was raised in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh, and it is said to be somewhere between middle class and upper middle class. His parents were Matthew Brian Crooks and Mary Elizabeth Crooks, and both of them hold active licenses as professional social workers in the state of Pennsylvania. They have both been licensed since the year 2002. We do not know, or at least right now, at the time that I am speaking, we don't know what exactly they did for work. We know that they have licenses as social workers, but that doesn't tell us very much, because it is a very broad field. Now, his father is a registered libertarian, and his mother is a registered Democrat. It's an interesting mix, right, for a couple. Neighbors have said that the family is very quiet and nobody really knows them very well. The neighbors did, however, state that this family had pro-Trump signs in their yard up until very recently. Now, we recently found out that the father was identified by the Trump campaign in 2016 as someone who would respond favorably to receiving pro-gun material in the mail. They identified him either as a gun owner or a hunter, or both. And they also believed that his wife would also be a good candidate to receive this sort of material in the mail. Now, Thomas also had a sister, an older sister, who was living independently from the family at the time of the crime, and she lived in a nearby neighborhood. According to one of her neighbors, she is a, quote, go-getter who has worked as a janitor at a high school and also as a waitress. The neighbor said she is, quote, real friendly. She's a nice girl. I couldn't say a bad word about her, end quote. And she is also a registered Republican. won a $500 Star Award from the National Math and Science Initiative. Now, both the students and the staff who were interviewed described him as being very quiet. Classmates said that he was often bullied. In fact, one guy said he was bullied every day for wearing camouflage hunting outfits and wearing surgical masks even after the COVID rules had been lifted. And he was also teased just for being so quiet. In his free time, he liked to play chess and video games, and he was also learning to program computers. In the year 2022, he was in a commercial for the financial company BlackRock, along with a teacher from his school and some other students as well. But BlackRock has recently removed this advertisement since the crime was committed. Classmates said that Crooks tried out for the school's rifle team, but that he didn't make it because he was bad at aiming or he just wasn't good at it. But the school district says that they have no record of him ever trying out. One classmate said of Crooks, quote, "He was a nice kid who never talked poorly of anyone, and I never have thought him capable of anything I've seen him do in the last few days." Another classmate who took American history with Crooks said that he, quote, "definitely was conservative," end quote. He talked about a mock debate that they had in class and said, quote, "The majority of the class were on the liberal side, but Tom, no matter what, always stood his ground on the conservative side," end quote. Another classmate recalled a time when the whole class did a project on the assassination of JFK, and she said that Thomas was extremely invested in this project. Now, when he graduated from high school, he went on to attend the community college of Allegheny County. He earned an associate's degree in engineering science in May of 2024, so just about 2 months before the crime would be committed, he graduated from the community college. Now, he graduated with high honors, and the school reviewed his records and found no disciplinary situations, no security problems, no nothing. He was planning on furthering his education. He had been accepted to the University of Pittsburgh, as well as Robert Morris University, but he had decided that he was going to go to Robert Morris University in the fall of 2024. In addition to going to college, he was also working as a dietary aide at a nearby nursing home, and there were no known problems with him there. His work was fine. He had no criminal record. He had no known mental health problems, although a search of his phone found that he had typed major depressive disorder at some point. He also had no history of military service, although a classmate said that he had talked about maybe joining the military in order to finance his college, but it didn't happen. He was a member at a local shooting club along with his father, and they used to go together. His father legally owned 20 firearms. Now, as far as as Thomas Matthew Crook's political views, they are basically unknown to us. On January 20th, 2021, when he was 17, he donated $15 to the Progressive Turnout Project through the Democratic Party donation platform Act Blue. His donation was made the same day that President Biden was sworn into office. According to the Progressive Turnout Project, he made this donation in response to an email he received about tuning into the inauguration. But sometime after that, in September of 2021, he registered as a Republican, and he unsubscribed from the Act Blue group's mailing list in 2022. He voted only once. It was the midterm elections in 2022, but that was due to his age. He hadn't been of voting age long enough to be able to vote for a president. His social media turned up no political posts. Now, prior to the shooting, he searched for images and public appearances of both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. On July 3rd, 2024, it was announced that Trump would hold a rally on July 13th at the Butler Farm Showgrounds near Butler, Pennsylvania. And he didn't live too far from there. Now, to let you know a bit about the security that was planned for this event. Attendees at Trump's rallies are screened for prohibited items such as weapons. The Secret Service routinely screens and monitors nearby buildings and businesses, including structures outside the security perimeter. So there is a perimeter, the security perimeter, and anyone inside of there has to be screened individually. They go through the metal detector, but outside of there, you don't have to go through any screening process. But they say they're still looking at what's going on outside the perimeter. 4 separate counter sniper teams were assigned to the event, 2 from the Secret Service and 2 from the local law enforcement. The Pennsylvania State Police were also involved in the security. The Secret Service had increased Trump's security detail in prior weeks due to intelligence indicating that Iran was plotting to assassinate Trump, although they have claimed that that is not true. Now, on July 12th, the day before the shooting, Crooks went to his shooting club to practice. He had previously asked his job for the day off on July 13th because he had something to do. That was all he said. He had something to do. On the day of the rally, July 13th, Thomas Matthew Crooks put on a t-shirt from Demolition Ranch, which is a YouTube channel which posts videos on different guns and explosive devices. He took his father's AR-15 style rifle and left home in his car. He then bought 50 rounds of ammunition from a gun store, and he went to Home Depot after that and bought a 5-foot ladder. Then he got back in his car and he drove to the rally, which was about an hour north of his home. In the trunk of his car, he had an explosive device, and he had the remote control for that device on him. So he parked there, he got out of the car, he climbed onto the roof of a building outside the security perimeter. It was about 400 feet north of the stage where Trump enforcement officers identified him and said that he seemed to be acting suspiciously. They talked about this over their radios. At 5:45 p.m., a member of the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit tactical team saw Crooks up on the roof. He notified other security services, and he took a photograph of Crooks. Several bystanders also noticed him and reported him for seeming suspicious. And that was about a minute and a half before the shots rang out. A Butler Township police officer suspected that Crooks might be up on that roof, and he had another officer hoist him up onto the roof, and just as he was grasping the top of the roof with both of his hands and pulling his head up, that was when Crooks turned, looked at the police officer, and pointed his gun right at the officer. Now the officer couldn't do anything. His hands were holding onto the roof. He couldn't grab for a gun or he would have fallen. But he ducked down so as not to be shot, and he fell 8 feet and injured his ankle. Now right after Crooks pointed his gun at the police officer and the police officer ducked down, that is when Crooks turned his gun and began shooting at Trump. Trump had arrived on the stage at 6:03 p.m. and it was 6:11 when Crooks fired 8 shots into the rally, hitting Trump and 3 rally-goers before he was instantly killed by a sniper from the Secret Service. Now, as the shots rang out, the audience members were yelling out, "Duck," and it was said that Secret Service snipers were probably obstructed from being able to see Crooks on the roof due to the slant of the roof and the trees that were in the way. So most of us know that Trump was shot in the top of his right ear, and he was not really injured seriously. It was just like a flesh wound, I believe. So he raised a hand to his ear right before he dropped down and hid behind the podium for safety. And the Secret Service agents lunged on top of him to protect him. And after only about 25 seconds had passed, the Secret Service helped Trump back up. And then you could see that there was blood dripping down his face. And he asked the Secret Service agents to let him get his shoes. And he said that because his shoes had flown off when they jumped on top of him. As he walked off stage with the Secret Service agents, Trump asked them to wait a second. And then he held up his fist in the air and he yelled, "Fight, fight, fight," to the crowd. And they responded by chanting USA. And Trump was then escorted to a vehicle and taken to the hospital for treatment. But as I said, he was really okay. Trump would later explain that he believes the reason why he was so lucky that day was because he had turned his head to look at an immigration chart just before the first shot came out, and that if he had not turned his head, then the bullet would have hit him in a much worse place. He had said, quote, "If I hadn't pointed at that chart and turned my head to look at it, that bullet would have hit me right in the head," end quote. Now, tragically, 3 audience members were shot and one of them was killed. His name was Corey Comparator. He was 50, and he was from Sarver, Pennsylvania. He worked as a project and tooling engineer, and he was the former chief of the Buffalo Township Volunteer Fire Company. He died while he was shielding his family from the gunshots. 2 other people were injured during the attack, but they survived. And they were identified as 57-year-old David Dutch and 74-year-old James Copenhaver. According to his family, James Copenhaver has suffered life-altering injuries. Immediately after the shooting, the police removed Crooks's corpse from the rooftop, and he was carrying no identification. But they confirmed his identity through fingerprint biometrics as well as DNA profiling. They found explosives in his car as well as at his home. Bomb technicians were called to the scene to secure and investigate the devices, and police sealed off the road that Crooks and his family lived on. As the authorities investigated Crooks, they found that he had searched for images of Trump, Biden, and several other public figures, and he had looked up dates of Trump rallies and the Democratic National Convention. On the gaming platform Steam, he had written, quote, "July 13th will be my premiere. Watch as it unfolds," end quote. And that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, rest in peace to Corey Comparator. My thoughts go out to his family and friends for this extremely tragic loss. And I'm keeping David Dutch and James Copenhaver in my thoughts, especially James, who is dealing with a life-altering injury. Now, what was the motive? At the time that I'm making this video, his motive has not been identified, but as far as I can see, it is as clear as day, and probably to most of you as well. He wanted to be remembered. He wanted to be infamous. He was looking for an event. It wasn't personal, I don't think. It didn't seem to matter if it was Trump or Biden. He just wanted to assassinate someone that was going to put him in the history books. And I think he was pretty successful, because everyone in the world, every adult in the world knows who he is. They might not know his name yet, but they've heard the story to some extent. Now, what other case out there can we say that about? Like, what other case that has happened in the past few years is known by everyone in the world? So this guy is now infamous for what he did. And that was his motive. And why do you think he was so interested in JFK's assassination? Well, I'm thinking that might have planted the seed. Granted, that was in high school, so quite a few years back, but it stuck in his mind as something important. Now, of course, the next question that I have, and that we all have, is how did he get this way? You know, what made him want to assassinate an important figure? What made him be willing to life for that, because he had to know that he wasn't going to live through this. I don't think that he thought he was going to stand up there, shoot at Donald Trump, and not be immediately shot down by someone in the security. He had to have known that he was not coming down off that roof alive. So how did he get there? How did he become that person? Well, from what we've heard, we get the sense that he was a little bit off, maybe more than a little, but from what everyone is saying, there was something off about him. So even though he did not have a history of mental health problems, that doesn't mean anything. It could be that he just hadn't gone for any treatment, or nobody was aware that he was dealing with anything, or the problem had really just become a serious problem right around this time. So, but that's not enough, right? The fact that he maybe is a little off or he has some mental illness, is that enough to do what he did? Absolutely not. So what else? Well, he was relentlessly bullied for being different, right? We heard that he was bullied maybe every single day for the way he dressed and for how quiet he was. And he had no friends, and he sat alone every single day at lunch. Can you imagine what that feels like? Every day, sitting alone while everyone else is eating, laughing, hanging out with friends. And not only are you alone, but people are making fun of you. So that has got to cause anger to build up in a person. So now we have some kind of mental health issue plus constant bullying leading to anger. Still not enough, right? Well, on top of that, it seems like he had zero empathy. He was a sociopath. He did not care about human lives. So put that in the pot with the other problems, and you have the potential for a monster. Someone who gets up on a roof with a rifle and shoots into a crowd. He had lots of ammunition. He was probably planning on killing more people than what he actually did. Plus, he was planning on setting off some bombs as well. So this was going to be a mass casualty event if it was not stopped quickly. And what can I say about the security? How did this happen? Well, you don't need me to say. Obviously, this should never have happened. Obviously, they should have been more aware of what was going on all around the perimeter. And it's inexcusable